next up we have Robin Wright. She's the head of Australasia and Asia Pacific for the Digital Preservation Coalition. She is a copyright lawyer interested in the intersection of copyright and digital technologies in the GLAM and education sectors. Robin has worked as a solicitor in the tertiary education sector, as research fellow at the Centre for Media and Communications Law at Melbourne Uni, and has managed several digital research projects. She is on the board of the Australian Digital Alliance and is co-lead of Creative Commons Australia. Today she will be introducing us to digital preservation and the DPC. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Jo, and thank you everyone for having me here today. It's great to meet you all. I'm Robin Wright. I'm Head Australasian Asia Pacific for the Digital Preservation Coalition, and it's great to have an opportunity to introduce the organisation to you and some of the resources that we have available. So we're very excited to be here because the MCC is a member of the DPC, so we love working with them. So the Digital Preservation is a global community. Coalition is a global community working together to bring about a sustainable future for our digital assets. And it's based in the UK. My boss is in Glasgow. It came together when a group of memory organisations got together in the early 2000s and began to realise that they were transferring or getting a lot of their most valuable material in a new format that they had no idea whether it was going to be readable in 5 or 10 years' time. And these were organisations that were devoted to long-term storage and archiving and maintenance of their content. So they realised they needed a community of like-minded organisations to get together and work on an ongoing basis on the long-term preservation of digital content. So we currently have about 180 member organisations worldwide, and they include traditional memory organisations, archives, museums, galleries, but also a lot of commercial and scientific organisations who hold collections of digital material that they see is valuable and requires preservation. So you can see these are some of our members. I was really lucky last year, the year before last, I went to our members forum in Dublin and was able to do a tour of the Guinness archive because Diageo, the brewers, are members of the DPC. And when you think about it, it's really important for brewers to be able to prove the long-term validity of their content, which is all held in digital form. So we have a lot of banks, CERN is a member, a lot of universities. So it's a really broad spectrum of organisations who are devoted to the long-term preservation of their digital content. And here in Australasia and Asia Pacific, we have 29 members. These are organisations, and you can see that they reflect a similar wide diversity to the worldwide membership. They are universities. They came originally from the university and the library and archive sector, but now we have broadened to include organisations like the MCC, the Commonwealth Bank Group Archives are members of the DPC. So these are all organisations who are working together as a community on digital preservation. And we range here from Singapore, China and Hong Kong through Australia to Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we have a really broad range of member organisations. And these are some of our logos of our local members. Our most recent local member is the ABC Archives. So what's really interesting is the ABC Archives joined the BBC, have been archives of the DPC for many years, and now just recently the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has just joined. So that's great for us. We have a wide range of broadcasting members. So, as I said, we're a membership organisation. Our current strategic plan from 2022 to 2027 works on building a welcoming and inclusive community working together to bring about a sustainable future for digital assets. And we work around 5 areas. Community, so we provide an effective and welcoming platform for professional exchange. Advocacy, and we encourage public and institutional policy support for digital preservation. And one thing we find a lot of our organisations internally have trouble advocating to management and budget people who control budgets about the importance of digital preservation and how it's different to just having an IT department, for example. So we do a lot of work around advocacy, workforce development. We help our members develop workforces who are equipped to address the specific challenges of preserving digital content. And good practice, we have a whole good practice team, most of whom are based in the UK, who work on supporting members towards greater maturity in their own digital preservation. And we are an accountable, sustainable and dynamically governed organisation. So, as I said, DPC members are organisations who create, manage and disseminate digital information, and they hold very different forms of digital content. Some material, as I said, has to be preserved forever. We have archives. My boss comes from archaeology. We have a lot of archaeology organisations who are obviously developing more and more material in digital form, much of which has to be maintained forever for human society. And we work to address everyone's digital preservation challenges collaboratively and strategically. One of the important things about the DPC, we're a charitable foundation and we are vendor and technology neutral. So we don't sell anything and we don't work with any particular vendors. Vendors can't be members of the DPC, but they can be supporters of the DPC, and that money is kept separately and put into a fund which is used for scholarships and research and development. But our operational funding is provided by our members who pay a membership fee to join the DPC. The full members set the direction of the coalition. So here in Australasia and Asia Pacific, we have 4 or 5 full members. Melbourne University, the National Archives of Australia, the Heritage Conservation Centre of Singapore. These are large organisations with large teams doing digital preservation. And our other members are associate members who participate in coalition activities. And we have the Australasian subcommittee is a subcommittee of the DPC that reports to the Global Board and the Global Council. And as I said, supporters are vendors who support the work of the coalition, and we have 2 supporters here in Australasia and Asia Pacific. But a lot of them are global organisations. So there's more information about joining us if you're interested on the DPC website. And here in Australasia and Asia Pacific, I'm the only staff member. I'm based here in Naarm in Melbourne, but our members are all over Australasia, as I said. So we have a lot of local events. One of the key things that I have to do in my job is make sure we have a program of events in our time zone. So we aren't the people who are always waking up in the middle of the night to go and see what the rest of the world is doing. So we run a program of events here in our local time zone. If we can't get local speakers, we try and get as many local speakers as we can. Sometimes we hold watch parties, like if they have events in the UK. They did one recently called Every Object is an Orchestra, talking about digital objects and the complexity of managing complex digital objects. And that was in the UK last week. We've recorded it, and a couple of weeks' time we're going to do a watch party here with a local expert. Cindy Moyer is going to come and speak to us about those issues as well. So we do Novice to Know-How training, which is online training modules which are freely available to everybody. As I said, we're a charitable foundation, so we try and make as many of our resources as possible freely available for anyone to use. And we are very aware that there are some organisations who are holding or archiving digital material that are never going to have the ability to join the DPC as members, but we hope they will be able to still use our resources. And we also, our members are able to join a number of global working groups. So we have working groups on digital forensics, on databases, on museums and galleries. We have a number of, they're just setting up another web archiving special interest group. And here in Australasia, we run a Managing Indigenous Cultural Material in Digital Form task force. So those are available to our members, and we make sure that all our special interest groups operate all around the world. So the third time it meets, it'll be in our time zone for all of them. So here are some of our upcoming events for June. We have a database SIG today at 4 o'clock, once I get home. I'll be running that. On the 17th of June, we're having a Managing Indigenous Cultural Materials Task Force meeting. Every month, we hold open DP Connect sessions, which are half-hour online sessions for anyone in the digital preservation community, members or non-members, to just come along and chat. If you've got a digital preservation question, come along. You can sign up on our events page, and it's open to anyone. And our next one is on the 19th of June. It's always on Friday, 1 o'clock Melbourne time. Changes in other parts of the world. And as I said, on the 23rd of June, we're going to hold the watch party on Every Object and Orchestra with Cindy Moyer from Swinburne University's digital service. And the other thing that I do a lot of is connecting our members with specialists in the UK, either who are members, staff members of the DPC, or with other member organisations who are dealing with similar issues. And the DPC runs member forums around the world every year, and we run them in all the 3 time zones. This year they've already had the first one in the Americas, in New York. They had one last couple of weeks ago in Edinburgh, and we'll be holding our members forum and networking event in Melbourne this year in October 2026. So we're hoping that we will have some publicly open sessions as well as the networking forums for our members here. And they are in-person events as well as part of it will be online. So I'll just quickly go through how we define digital preservation. Digital preservation we see as the series of managed activities necessary to ensure continued access to digital material for as long as necessary. So as long as necessary, of course, is different for our different organisations. So a lot of records management people will have disposal schedules. They don't want too much stuff hanging around for the wrong reason. But some of our members, as long as necessary, is forever. So one of our members in the UK is the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. So they are dealing with buildings and material or nuclear things that have to be read and accessible by human beings in hundreds or thousands of years' time. So we have different activities that are going to be necessary depending on how long you need to keep your material. But we try to cover everybody depending on what type of digital material that they need to preserve. But it's also important to remember that digital preservation is not just backing things up. You do get people who say, oh yeah, we've spoken to our IT department and said we need to do digital preservation, and they say, oh, that's okay, we'll buy you more storage. Well, more storage isn't the solution. It's a series of managed activities. It's not just the same as digitisation. The other thing I've come across is a lot of organisations who get a grant, get some funding for digitisation, they get some nice kit, they put up a lovely room, they digitise and digitise and digitise, and they get miles of fantastic stuff in a particular format at a particular time, and then someone says, where are you going to store it? How are you going to access it? How are you or your users going to access this in 10, 20, 50 years' time? So if you haven't put some money into your grant application to cover long-term digital preservation, and you've just got money to digitise stuff, whatever your stuff is, we see that the problem is it can end up on a hard drive on someone's shelf. And in 10 years' time, you might find you can't access it. So a lot of money is being spent on digitisation, but if you can't convince people to also talk about digital preservation, you might be wasting a lot of your money. So I think that's a really important issue I come across quite a lot. And it's not a one-off activity. Standards change, systems change, formats change. Your usage is likely to change. I saw the size of those blown up images on the staircases there and thought, wow, you know, that's going to be something that wasn't digitised 20 years ago, because the bit rate would have been hopeless for those sort of huge blow-ups. And unfortunately, there's no clear finishing line. This is something that everyone is now having to build into their ongoing workflow and planning in their organisation. But as I said, it's not about keeping everything forever. It's about managing things and working out what you need to keep and for how long. But it's not a problem that's been solved. So obviously, you and a lot of other organisations are very expert in preserving traditional media. You have photographs, you have books, you've done these things for years. You understand the information held in tangible media. It's robust, it's independently understandable. You can pick up a book that was written in the 13th century, and if you read Latin, you know what they were talking about. And we all have well-developed approaches to preserving that material. And we are experienced in assigning the value. We know when a medieval manuscript is valuable and why. But once it moves into digital, all bets are off. Digital needs technology to interpret. If I pick up a CD-ROM that I worked on 20 years ago, and I have some, I have to admit, in my shelves, in my cupboards, I probably can't read them. I certainly can't access the data, and I probably can't access the format that the data was held in. So this need for technology to interpret your material is really a fundamental change in the way we've thought about the information that we store. Digital is ephemeral, obviously. There's often no original object, or it's not different to a copy of the object. It's the same. We have a lot of problems with obsolescence. Hardware, software, carrier, and format obsolescence are things we deal with all the time. And a lot of our members deal with evolving content. I was dealing with some people who have databases where the data is input from drones and scientific devices daily. Their databases are updated daily, and this material has to be constantly updated. So what are you preserving in something that's constantly changing? We also have a lot of art galleries who deal with artworks that are designed to change as part of their exhibition. How do you preserve something like that to show it again in the future? And how do you value collections? We had someone who, as I said, they'd digitised a lot of their stuff, they'd put it on a hard drive, the hard drive was on a shelf, and the management came through and said, we're valuing our content. And they valued all the content that was on the shelves, and one of the things on the shelves was the hard drive, which had the digital copies of absolutely everything they'd done over years, and they valued it at $10 from Officeworks. So there's no understanding of how you value this very valuable digital content in many cases. And that's something we're still working on as well. This is a constant question that comes up with DPC members. And your organisations need new skills and solutions. And this is often quite confronting for people who have come up through hard copy archiving to say, you need IT skills, you need to code, you need to know what Python is. You know, these are things that often are quite confronting for our people working in our areas. But obviously digital creates new opportunities. You have your wonderful blow-ups, you have online access, you have, you know, pad access in your organisations. You can send materials across the world or across the country. So it is positive, but it has a lot of negative things as well. So obviously, as I said, there are a lot of technical risks when you're holding digital material, and I was interested to see whether you felt that you potentially had any migration problems when you were migrating to Vernon, whether you had any material that suddenly you couldn't access. You had bit rots, file format obsolescence, hardware or software obsolescence, viruses. There's some really interesting work with software preservation organisations who are wondering how you preserve, as an archaeological record, computer viruses. You know, because they're part of our human history. And what if you don't? And in fact, someone who wanted to preserve one of them got into real trouble with their IT department because they said, no, you're not putting that onto our network. So, you know, how do you preserve that sort of things? But viruses are a real problem for us. Dissociation, loss of context. You might have the data, but if it was on a database and it had to be interactive in some way, if you've lost that interactive capacity, can you still access the data appropriately? And this is something the National Archives of Australia is very concerned about, I know. Network failures, there's a lot of technical risks you're facing. Also, potentially people, accidents happen, mistakes happen. People can be disorganised, have things to hide. There's a lot of ways data can be altered. And there's more than just technical risks. There's a lot of issues that are quite interesting to me. As I said, or you said earlier, my background is as a copyright lawyer, so I'm always interested in poor rights management, you know, because you often get people who, copyright lasting for such a long time, people say, oh, well, we've digitized all this wonderful material. Can we just make it available online? And I'll say, well, what's the copyright status? And they'll go, we don't know. And if you don't know, well, how are you going to access that material? And until just a month ago, in Australia, you'd have a real problem if it was an orphan work, if you didn't know where it came from. But we now have orphan works legislation in Australia. So I hope some of you will be able to use that to access material that you might not have been able to access otherwise. But anyway, so yes, so Paul writes me. Lost encryption keys. We're full of stories of a staff member who's left the organisation under positive or negative circumstances and taken a PIN number with them. How can you access it? If they're the only one who knows it, you're stuffed. So poor version control, inadvertent deletion. I worked with someone in the early days of the internet who ran a website, and he was working late at night. He used to work late into the dark, and he thought, oh, I'll just update that thing, and he pressed a button and deleted the whole live website of an organisation without realising he'd done it. So yes, poor file naming, corruption, link rot, all these types of technical risks are things that we help people address. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I wanted to run through some of the resources that are available on the DPC website. As I said, we make as many as possible openly available and freely available, but some of them, are particularly the recordings of our sessions, are often limited just to member access. We have the Digital Preservation Handbook, which is a very broad, useful publication. It's just being updated at the moment. All the staff are in the middle of rewriting it. And so version 3, we hope, will be available in 2027. So you can go in and use it now. Be aware some of the links are a little bit out of date. It's getting quite elderly, which is why we're doing the update. We have the Novice to Know-How online training modules. We have now, I think, 5 modules available. They're self-paced modules. Anyone can sign in online, and you just go in and use them yourself or use them for your staff. We have some members who have all their staff do the Digital Preservation for Beginners online module, so that way they know everyone is at the same level of understanding about what digital preservation is. We have one around building a digital asset register, email preservation, providing access to your digital content, and we've just put a new one, I think it's going to be actually launched next week, on advocacy for digital preservation. So these are freely available. Please go in and sign up. They're all available through the DPC's website. I said I'd talk about a couple of toolkits. We have quite a number of toolkits, but we have one on establishing a digital asset register. So it tells you how to build and maintain your own digital asset register. If you don't know what you've got, you're not going to be able to preserve it. And there's a template, and it helps you with understanding your digital content, managing it over time, and making preservation decisions. One of our most valued and well-known resources is the RAM, the Rapid Assessment Model. And what that is, it's a maturity model for digital preservation. So what that is, it's a downloadable worksheet, which is freely available in 9 languages, and allows anybody to assess your current and future digital preservation capabilities against 11 criteria in your own organisation. Organisational criteria and service criteria. So we go through policy and strategy, legal support, IT support, content preservation, bitrate preservation. I can't remember them all, but there's 11 of these criteria. What you do is you go through, you work out where you think you are with your organisation currently. You code it. You say, okay, we think we're level 0 to 4. 4 is very high, 0 is none, and under each capability you put out the reasons why you think that, and so that allows you to know where you currently are in your organisation and then where you want to be. And it spits out a very nice graph, and so these are freely available and really helpful in advocacy in your organisation. So anyone can use them. Members get an additional service. They submit their data every year. We anonymise it, and that we provide with benchmarking data. So member organisations can look at other similar organisations around the world and see where they are in comparison, which also helps with your advocacy with your management. We also have a digital preservation business case toolkit. If you need to establish a business case to tell your organisation or other people why you need to do digital preservation, this toolkit will help you. It tells you what makes a good digital preservation business case, and understand where you're up to, and gives you a step-by-step guide for developing your own business case. And it includes a template. And we also have a toolkit for developing a digital preservation policy. If your organisation needs a policy around this, this helps you create a policy to support your activities. And again, it tells you what makes a good digital preservation policy. There's a step-by-step guide to building your own, and a template. And I think that one, or the previous one, has a business case, a sort of case study example of other people who've done it in our organisations. And this is a particular toolkit that I'm quite interested in. In the UK, last year they put together a community archives digital preservation toolkit. And that was really focused on small community archives who wanted to preserve their digital material. And we were very excited about it, but it was produced in the UK by funding from the UK archives, and really it's very focused on their part of the world. So we've set up a pilot project with global ambassadors in our region. So the DPC is going to work with local communities and help develop a version of this Community Archives Digital Preservation Toolkit for our part of the world. So I'm very excited about that. The pilot project is operating this year, and I've heard that we've got 8 global ambassadors, and we're really keen that this will help us get the ideas of digital preservation into some smaller community archives, including Indigenous communities in Australia and New Zealand in particular. So this is going to be quite an exciting toolkit if we can get it organised for our part of the world. So please get involved. We welcome connections from both members and non-members. You would be welcome to join if you want to really play a role in the organisation and be part of it. We are a welcoming community. Anyone can apply to join. It has to be passed by our global board, but it usually is. We welcome everybody into the organisation. And as I said, we have a growing membership in Australasia and Asia Pacific, and we now also have an office in the Americas, so we're expanding quite a lot in the Americas as well, which is great. And that's from Canada to Chile. We have members in that part of the world. So as I said, we have a lot of things happening. It would be great if you'd like to be involved with us, and please contact me anytime. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Jed.
Robin, for the benefit of the group, could you just explain what's happened with the change legislation around orphan works and what that means?
Oh, I've got plenty of time to do that. Well, previously in Australia and in most of the world, there was no way, as copyright lasts such a long time, there was no way to work out if the copyright owner was unknown or lost, whether you could reuse copyright material, because copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years in Australia and most parts of the world. So you'd get a lot of people saying, well, I've got this old photo, or I've got a poster or something, I'd really like it to use it in my museum, can I copy it? Nobody knew. So everyone had to take risks, or a lot of material was just not used for that reason. So the Australian government realised that we needed to modernise our copyright law, and they have now brought in a process whereby if you do a proper due diligence check and try and find the copyright owner, it will limit your liability if the copyright owner later turns up and says you should have paid me to use my material. So it's worth having a look at. There is a quite lengthy explanatory memorandum. I'm still working my way through it.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
Robin, just looking at the list of people in the UK, particularly there's a lot of museums and archives and organisations. In Australia, there seems to be a glaring gap in terms of museum representation. The National Museum and the NCC covers the ASM. Is there a reason for that, or is it just that part of that advocacy that hasn't quite happened yet in Australia to bring them on board?
Look, I think there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of budget challenges. I speak to a lot of museums who would love to join the DPC but really have very limited budgets. Our To be an associate member costs around $7,000 Australian dollars a year. To be a full member, $19,000 a year. So it's not an insubstantial cost. But also, I think you have to have an organisation that is actively doing digital preservation for it to be worth joining the DPC. And some organisations are more committed to that than others. The National Museum of Australia is really active. We have the State Library of New South Wales, the Art Gallery of New South Wales is very active. So what I find is they come to us when they're ready. But I do a lot of advocacy, and my aim is to go out and get people to join. I've been speaking a lot to the Australian Museum again, who would love to join. But the timing has to be right. So.
What about someone like Getty Images that has masses of other photographers' work, and they're the home for them to earn their income? Do they see the value of preserving what they've got?
Yeah, I think the Getty Trust is a member.
Yeah, okay.
I know we've certainly held events at their places in Los Angeles, because my colleague in New York went there to the Getty Trust the other day.
Yeah.
So I think they are members, yeah. Yeah, a lot of commercial organisations like that are very committed. It's like
Yeah, it has to be.
It's like
That's what they do. Yeah.
the brewers and people like that. Their digital material is really, really valuable. So they do a lot of digital preservation. Yeah.
Questions? I'm curious, is digital preservation something that most people are thinking about? Yes?
Well,
Yeah.
if you digitise your collection, you have to think about it.
Yes.
And want to do it right.
But amazingly, as I said, I meet organisations who don't do that, because there's this sort of feeling that, well, I've digitised it, so I've preserved it. Not you people, I know, but I have some other organisations who are. I know. But people who are not so connected with information management, like councils, for example, and people like that, they've got a million other things to do, and they said, well, we gave you money to digitise. What are you complaining about? And it is really hard. That's why we do so much advocacy. It's really hard to get the message across.
I'd just like to say, pretty neat to have a presentation about online and not mention Google or Meta in the entire presentation. As a small museum manager myself, we try and have a policy of being followers rather than leaders. So being able to be at these sort of presentations and hear what the big players are involved in and be able to come in and get little bits out is really important to us. And this is why I come to these seminars, right? This is fantastic for me.
Yeah,
So
I
thank
agree.
you.
Fantastic.
Right, we'll get involved. As I said, we run DP Connect sessions every month on the third Friday of every month. Anyone can drop in. So if you've got a digital preservation problem, even if you don't think you can solve it, or there'll be someone there who you can chat to who'll say, oh, I think you should speak to so-and-so. So feel free to come along. They're very friendly sessions.
So just one more thing. The interface between Indigenous protocols on property rights and digital preservation, is that an area that DPC is working on? Or?
Yeah, we're very interested in it. And can I just say, it's our part of the world that has driven that. And we're very keen to say to the rest of the world, you need to know about this because you've got a lot of stuff there that came from here. We've got a reason for that. So we have IATSIS is a member, and we have another member who has a lot of Indigenous content. The National Archives of Australia has a lot of material. This is something organisations are taking slowly and trying to listen to Indigenous voices, and we are doing that as well, and that's why we set up the task force. So we're using it mainly as a way to listen to the Indigenous representatives within those organisations, and most of the big organisations have an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander team of some sort. So we are just listening to those people and trying to identify the gaps between how you manage your analogue collection in relation to Indigenous material, where there are a lot of protocols and things in place, and the digital material, and trying to identify and solve some of those gaps and speak to the vendors and the software suppliers about it. So one that's come up is, for example, automatic generation of thumbnails. So we have a lot of software providers that wouldn't have even considered this was an issue. But it can be an issue because of access controls over, a lot of secret or sacred material should not be seen by people, and it means that people can come across it by mistake. Suddenly, this can have damaging consequences for staff and for users of your material. So we're just trying to identify where digital is different and how our members and other members are dealing with that. I'm really hoping, we do DP clinics once a month around the world, which are open to everybody. I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to run one on managing Indigenous culture material out of our part of the world to try and get some of that information to other parts of the world. But we're only, I just say it's only dealing with Indigenous material from Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. We haven't, although we have had contacts with, we haven't dealt with Canadian or other parts of the world with Indigenous communities. But yeah, we're very keen to work in the area.
Any more questions? No? Great. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Gabby Keegan and Ben Yench, who serve within the digital communications team at the Melbourne Cricket Club, a team that delivers a broad range of multimedia to a wide gamut of audiences. As social media specialist, Gabby runs the social channels for the MCC, the MCG and the Australian Sports Museum, reaching millions every week via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok and LinkedIn. She has worked at the club for over 3 years and unfortunately supports Essendon. Ben Yench joined as video producer in 2024 and leads film and video production across the MCC, MCG and ASM. This includes the creation of social media pieces, scripted promos and sports documentaries. Ben's football team, the Gold Coast Suns, is not much better than Gabby's. Today they will be unpacking the strategy and execution that went into promoting WARN, Treasures of a Legend. Thanks. You happy with that?
Hello everyone, thank you so much for having us today. As Joe said, I'm Ben and this is Gabby. Fair to say this is not our usual room, so we'll be changing gears a bit based on what we've been speaking about this morning, but it's been really great to hear from both April and Robin this morning. I've certainly learned a lot. But yes, as Joe said, we are more in the digital creation rather than digital preservation worlds. And so we're going to talk about how we helped raise awareness for and bring promotion to the wonderful Shane Warne exhibition that is currently down in the ASM. Now, before we begin, and at the risk of sounding a little ignorant, can I get a show of hands? Who has used social media in the past week, either personally or as part of your organisation? Great, and that includes YouTube. So watching YouTube late at night on your TV, about extreme bird watching, anything like that? Great, cool. Okay, so, but yeah, obviously there's questions at the end, so if there's anything we touch on that doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to ask. Right, so yes, as I said, we are talking about the Shane Warne exhibition. Did we go through that this morning, Jed?
A lot
Yes.
of people had the opportunity.
Lovely.
We've also discussed it in Origin previously as well.
Beautiful. So anyway, the backstory on that is that last year the MCC acquired this treasure trove of objects from the Shane Warne family. Warnie was obviously one of the greatest cricketers of all time. And the MCG was regarded as his home ground as a Victorian, so it felt very right for this wonderful collection of objects to come into the care of the Australian Sports Museum. So that happened late last year, and very quickly Jed and his team put together this fantastic exhibition that you've seen this morning. Very quickly, in order to capture the hordes of English supporters that were coming for the summer of cricket last year, as well as a sporting mad public here in Australia to come and see some of these treasures. And so we in the digital communications team were tasked with helping to bring this to life. Now I should say that Gabby and I Two of the soldiers within a team of 5 were led by our fearless manager, Ben Osborne, and we were given the assignment to raise awareness to not only the acquisition, the fact that the MCC was, and the Australian Sports Museum was taking care of these objects, but also to begin to promote visitation to the exhibition. And we were going to do that through organic social media channels with the goal of strong viewership and engagement to that content across the project's life cycle. Now, it's important to stipulate the difference between what organic social media is. So organic simply refers to the notion that you're putting content out into the social world without any money behind it to support it going to a broader audience. So our marketing team, who worked on this project concurrently, they sit in a slightly different team, and they used paid advertising dollars to put content out through a variety of channels about the exhibition to a broader audience, whereas what we do, we put the content out organically and just hope that the algorithm picks it up and that people engage with it, which starts a sort of a knock-on effect of content being spread further and further. So it's great in that you can deliver messages really broadly for nothing if it's good and engaging, but conversely, it might not be seen by very many people at all if it kind of tanks. So that's the world of organic. We broke the project down into 2 phases. So the first phase we called the announcing phase, and then the sustaining phase. The megaphone there denotes when we announced that this was all going to happen. So that happened in late November. There was a press conference out on the turf. The Warne family came in, and we announced that this exhibition was then going to open about 2 or 3 weeks later in December. And then the Boxing Day test, BDT, was the other key milestone there before we then entered this longer tail as we entered the football season, where we were charged with sustaining interest to a cricket story. Right, so I'll now hand over to Gabby to talk about our target audience.
So Ben touched on those phases that we worked through in our storytelling, and these phases linked really closely in with our target audiences. We find here at this venue in particular, our social content often operates in event cycles, and this campaign was no different. So with that November launch and December opening in our calendars, we knew that the Summer of Cricket was going to be absolutely key for us. So that first segment, the Ashes ticket holders, were going to be fundamental in garnering early attention and creating hype that would then carry us through the full life cycle of the exhibition. Obviously, for many Australians, the Summer of Cricket is synonymous with the Boxing Day test. We had the added layer of the Ashes and obviously those strong ties to Warnie. This was a highly engaged cricket audience, so in theory they should have been easy for us to convert, but we needed to make sure we built that awareness. Next up, we'd then look to local cricket fans. So they may not have attended the Ashes, but they're engaged with the sport. They may have caught the broadcast, planning to come to an event here at the G over the summer. And these 2 segments were really important for us in those very early announcement stages because they'd play such an important role in building that early momentum. As we then moved through our event cycle, we'd look beyond the Summer of Cricket and look to capture Australian sporting fans more broadly. People that are coming to the G maybe for AFL or a special event. They might take a little more effort than an avid cricket fan to convert, but by this point we were also confident we'd have the backing of those early patrons through the doors to help us through. We then moved to those last few segments, so your families, your tourists, your history buffs, ones that were really important to reach but weren't necessarily as time sensitive as those earlier segments. So through extended exposure and longer form storytelling, we'd be able to capture these groups at times that best suited them. So whether that was a school holiday period or their next trip to Melbourne. We had a range of social channels to use to reach these people. So we utilised our full suite of social channels, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok and YouTube across our Australian Sports Museum brand. The additional levers we had to pull, which really helped us, given the Australian Sports Museum channels don't have the largest audience, but we have other internal brands we were able to pull upon. So our MCG channels, our MCC channels internally, and then we were also able to work really closely with external stakeholders, so Cricket Australia and the Warne family, to help us really reach the relevant audiences that we wanted to.
It might be just worth pointing out, Gabby, the size of these, just for context. So, like on Instagram, for example, the ASM account has
Sitting about 6,000-7,000 at the moment.
followers, and then MCG is more like 270,000, give or
Correct.
take.
Yeah.
MCC, 20,000?
22?
Whereas like Cricket Australia has like a couple of million, right? And so, and then the Warne family, the children have different varying sizes, maybe 70, 100,000 here or there. But the benefit of being able to collaborate across channels like this is a smaller account like the ASM. When you collaborate with the MCG, you suddenly put the content to 7,000 plus 270,000 there. So we were able to inflate the audience that way by working that way.
So moving forward to how we then announced this across our social media channels, we had a relatively short runway to announce the exhibition, but we knew we really wanted to create a moment on social that would build engagement and create conversation. As I've touched on, those initial early periods were really important to drive awareness of the exhibition. So we wanted to sell out those sessions in the first 2 weeks and set ourselves up for impressive numbers over the summer. So to do this, we began with a teaser video 24 hours prior to the exhibition announcement. Fortunately, here at the MCG and within the Australian Sports Museum, we have plenty of strong ties to Shane Warne, and we were able to lean into those visual cues. So his statue outside Gate 2, the Shane Warne stand, and the much-loved hologram within the museum. We just flashed through those visual cues with some simple text to entice users to come back the next day. This created a if you know moment for fans, encouraging them to engage, generate a conversation, creating enough intrigue but not giving away too much. We were pleased with the metrics that came from this teaser, particularly the high share rates and strong conversation, which came from outside the museum's following, as Ben touched on utilising those additional channels. But we wouldn't have the full picture on the success of the launch until the announcement came the following day.
Right, bit of show and tell. This is the video that we dropped to announce that this exhibition was coming.
Put the helmet on by the personality of Shane Warne.
So Dad and I were very similar, and this dancing stump of Dad's, when he did this, was so iconic, and I just think that is just so cool.
So as you can see from those metrics there, we had 3.6 million views across that piece of content and 180,000 engagements, numbers we were really, really happy with. And what was also really positive to see was an above average watch time. So we were capturing those users in those initial seconds. On social, you've got such a small window, approximately 3 seconds before someone decides if they're going to scroll away. So we had an above average watch time on that piece, and also a high number of shares and saves. So that indicates that that piece of content is being shared in group chats among family and friends and saved for later in the case of someone saving the content, something they intend on coming back to. Another nice little positive byproduct to this Warne launch was the increasing following across our ASM channels, a nice little 25% boost. We then moved into the weeks leading into the opening. So following the buzz of that announcement, we had a 3-week period to capitalise on the momentum of that launch video. We were very fortunate we had really great buy-in from the family and the museum's team that essentially granted us an all-access pass to capture the moments behind the scenes. So the focus during this period was on raw phone-captured content, which we could turn around really quickly. We leaned into the emotion of the collection, with content pieces focusing pretty heavily on the family, launching the exhibition, interacting with the exhibition's objects, and experiencing the finished product for themselves for the first time. Then once the exhibition opened, we were able to expand our focus to the general public having those experiences for the first time. We captured vox pops, first impressions, and favourite objects. Then, as the exhibition life cycle, continued, our focus began to shift from that short-form content to the next phase and a way we could utilise storytelling to reach audiences over a more sustained period.
Yes, so at this point in the story, we're up to here, and we're entering into a period where we were up against the opposition of the seasons changing. So we're going from the summer of cricket into, at least in the Australian context, the winter doldrums of football and the Gold Coast Suns. So we had been experimenting for about a year now with longer form storytelling on social media, namely YouTube. YouTube is a slightly different beast, or at least it can be, to some of the other social pipes, because audiences are happy to go there and camp out and watch stuff, often very niche stuff, for a longer period of time. We also are strong believers in the power of story and character and how they connect deeply with an audience and can motivate action. So we'd been having some success with some short-run documentaries, very often tied to the Australian Sports Museum because of the depth and richness of story that lives within the halls down there. So we asked ourselves, could we do a documentary around this Warne exhibition? And we looked particularly to the poster boy for sports documentaries, Drive to Survive, the Formula One Netflix series. Has anybody heard of or seen this? Yes, so this sport was bankrupt. It was not in a good way at all until Netflix came along and made they're now in their 7th season of this show. But basically, it removed the helmet from the driver so that you could connect with the person behind the car, behind the mask, and it wildly grew the sport. Like half the ladies in the office have a group chat about it. They're obsessed with it. People you would never think would be petrol heads are now dedicated to the sport because we now know who these people are. We know who their characters are. So we thought, can we explore something like that for Warne? But the problem was we didn't have any idea. And so whenever we don't have an idea or we need to find an idea in our team, we follow a 3-step process that we call the anatomy of an idea, whereby we observe, imagine, and execute. Let me walk you through it. So the observation part of coming up with an idea is we look at the material and we try to identify something that stands out that's true, like a nugget of truth. We then imagine how can we take this nugget of truth and express it in a new or different way, and then what will, in terms of then executing that, what are we actually going to create to broadcast that expression to the world? So in the case of Warnie, we observed that his highlights were already widely seen. They were so familiar to so many sports fans. However, the objects themselves that were connected to the highlights, these objects that we had acquired in this collection, many of them had been hidden for like decades, like 30 years. They'd just been living in a box in Warnie's storage facility. So we thought that was kind of interesting. Then we imagined what we could do with that, and it dawned on us that not only the public, but even high-profile cricket people would be like falling over themselves to behold some of these objects, particularly because Warnie hadn't really shown them around. And so we decided that we would execute a short docu-series for YouTube where we would reunite people that were kind of at the scene of the crime with the object. So for example, can anybody tell me what this moment is? MCC staff excluded. Ball of the century, very good. Here's Warnie bowling his very first delivery in a test match in England to Mr. Mike Gatting, a very fine batsman in his own right and player of spin. And the ball has turned from about there to clip the top of the off stump, and it's ended up over here. And, 10 years later, this is crowned the finest delivery in the 20th century. So we had the idea of reuniting this guy with this ball, which admittedly I was nervous about because I didn't know whether or not Gatting, who's part of his legacy now is the Gatting ball, would be keen to talk about it, but thankfully he was. So we set out to create 3 episodes, each 10 minutes long, where we would have famous person A reunited with object B, and then these are shorter derivatives, like little clips that we would put on our other social channels to push through to the feature on YouTube. Here is our thumbnail, the launch imagery, if you will, that went out on YouTube. So if you were scrolling through YouTube on a Saturday night looking for something to watch, this is what you see. Gatting finally sees the Gatting ball. There it is. Hopefully that entices you to click and go on the journey. Here's some imagery from the 10-minute episode. So we interviewed Mike, who was very generous and very happy to talk about all of this during the Boxing Day test. Here he is holding the ball for the first time. In his words, I didn't even see it the first time, so he was great fun. And here, these guys are some two chaps from the Barmy Army dressed as beers that I interviewed about Warney for some extra depth, because that's what we wanted to do with this project, was dig under the skin of the ball and what it really said about Shane as a character. So, did it work? Yes. We've only released the first episode. The second one comes out in a couple of weeks. But the first one was a roaring success for us. Our previous best sports doco had done about 40,000 views. But what really warmed the cockles of our hearts was that 85% of viewers were new to our YouTube channel. And 60% viewed it on a television, right? So they're not just doom scrolling on the bus. They are sitting down with their YouTube app on their TV, choosing to watch this rather than Drive to Survive on Netflix. And that's the beauty of social, is it does give you that access if you can earn it organically. The comments also were very favourable, particularly people who had been to the exhibition or wanted to go were calling out what a great job Jed, Alex and the team had done there. And so this brings us back to our timeline. So we're up to here basically. So we're about to drop the next episode, and then there'll be another one towards the tail end of the exhibition to continue to keep that awareness front and centre. So to wrap it all up, these were our business, the project goals. Did it drive extra visitation and brand awareness? Look, it's very hard to put hard metrics on that, particularly when you're playing in the awareness area. So that's what we call top of funnel, where we're just trying to capture a bit of attention, put it on people's radar, whereas the marketing team were much more at the conversion end by putting out ads that might have the price of admission or calling people more explicitly to book. So it's hard to measure that, but the anecdotal evidence, like I showed you in the comments section and stuff that came through on this short form socials that Gabby talked about, was extremely favourable. And as Gabby touched on, the Australian Sports Museum channel, one of our smaller channels, received fabulous growth through this, which not only helps with this particular exhibition, but secures long-term benefit for other things that we might want to promote at the museum in years to come, because now we've got those guys, those users in the ecosystem. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
With the other two episodes that are coming, are they filmed? Are they planned? Did you wait to see what got the most taps in the Brisbane thing?
Yeah, very good question. We sort of built this plane as it was taking off to some degree. So we identified that the Boxing Day test would bring a lot of A-list talent to the ground, and so we had to kind of react based on who was coming to see if we could build something around that. So for example, we found out that Adam Gilchrist was coming in, and I love Gilly, and I know he's a good storyteller and just engaging talent, and so... Spoilers. So, yeah, that does not leave this room. But we thought, okay, what object was Adam Gilchrist associated with? And we then found that object and built that story around him. And so in regards to filming it, we've shot all the three key interviews with the three key persons. And then I edited this one in February, and then I only just finished editing the second episode, and I haven't even started the third. So there are things that I observed from the first episode's performance that have influenced how I've cut the second, and then based on how this performs, that will again influence the third. And if anything, it's the things we observe will apply not just to the editing of the actual telling of the doco, which I encourage you all to go watch, but even this, just the thumbnail, like this is 80 cents of our dollar in terms of trying to get people to engage with the content, is will they click on that? And so a lot of thought goes into, like we ummed and ahed about whether we put this yellow arrow on there for quite some time.
I like the arrow.
Thank you so much.
Why, from a non-cricket aficionado, I would not know who that was. Like that could be an MCC worker for all I know.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's making the ball more obvious.
Yes.
That would have caught my eye.
Yeah, that was a challenge for us, was how famous is Mike Gatting? Do we lean into him or do we lean into Warney? And Mike does not didn't look quite like that when he played. Whereas Warney obviously passed and kind of hasn't become old, if you know what I mean. So it was all these things are things we debate around how we. I think we A/B tested. We tested different titles here, and I think we put in brackets new Warn documentary as one as well, just to get Warn in there for search engine optimization. But yeah, to answer your question, we somewhat build it as we go and respond accordingly, but we did bag all those interviews at the start of the year. The docos feature secondary interviews as well, just to support it. So Jed features heavily in this first one and does a very fine job, particularly being of English heritage and living in England at the time. He could speak to that, which was really cool. Alex features in the next one, and she speaks really well as well. And so those interviews I am chasing now that I know what the core interview is. Yeah.
And also, as a cricket buff myself, the idea of the arrow towards the ball says that there's more to this than just bowling the cricket ball. There could be something about the actual ball that's unique about that you're going to tell a story about. Now, some of these things aren't going to be in the video, but it will get you to take the next step.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all about creating intrigue and again, funnily, the thing we keep noticing with YouTube is the longer we make these things, the better they perform generally. So our first foray into docos here was a 5 or 6 minute short doc about Fatso, the fat-assed wombat. Does everybody remember Fatso? Yeah, I didn't even know about Fatso until Alex told me he was going to a day spa to get fixed, and so I went down there and saw this thing. That turned into a 5 or 6 minute doco about Olympic conspiracies, and that performed well, but this was up to 10 minutes. But I suspect we could have made this go for 40 minutes, and people would have maybe clicked on it more, because that's what they're looking for, is in-depth niche stories about sport, about history online, and that's what's beautiful about YouTube.
This is partly a question for you guys, but also partly a question for the museum team. You're selling the exhibition and the content under the ASM brand here, but the reality is the collection belongs to the Melbourne Cricket Club and is owned privately by the club. Can you speak a little bit to selling it as a public thing where Warnie is someone that kind of belongs to the people, and that's kind of how you're selling it, but it's paywalled in a museum and belongs to a private cricket club?
That might be above my pay grade.
I don't get paid that much. It's entirely, it's a great question, and it's one that most people won't realise. You've lived it, you've worked here. You know the nuance.
Yeah.
A lot of people just won't know, and so it's not an issue. But in terms of it's driven by the logistics. If the space for the exhibition had been in the MCC Museum, not the ASM, and we had no choice, it would have gone there. And then it would have been an MCC Museum story, we'd have tried to pump up that profile. It would have been a very different approach. Branding, colours, style. So to an extent you're led by the logistics and what's possible. And then you try to retrofit to suit. But the fact that the Warn collection is owned not by the ASM but by the MCC doesn't really matter either. You're watching this, it's about the person, the objects. The ownership model, we care about that stuff, but 99.9% of people don't care, wouldn't care, I think. Do you agree? Is that?
Yeah.
I think the more simple answer is our objective was to drive visitation to the Sports Museum.
It's a sexy piece of hype.
Yeah.
It's a very sexy piece of hype.
Yeah.
Did you drive the visitation?
We'd like to say yes, but
You did.
You can see you've driven your social media engagement, but what about visitors?
Yeah, the visitation was through the roof.
Yeah.
And they didn't hear about it because I was selling on street corner, they heard about it because of these guys. It was marketing and a combination.
Like we said, there's what we do, there's what marketing do, where they, which is paid advertising. There's a bit of a Venn diagram and a bit of a crossover. So that video we played did really well organically for us, and then marketing came along after that success and put money behind it, and it went to even more people. And even the marketing team might not be able to give you hard and fast metrics on how many feet did that translate to going through the door. But the way we see our work here is, yes, primarily we're driving visitation and attendance, physical people coming to a physical venue, but it does also digitally, as Robin was saying, extend the reach of the museum to some degree. So we had people commenting from all over the world, people viewing it all over the world. I think 16 viewers from Finland. And they can they're probably not coming to Australia anytime soon, but they at least can engage with the heritage and the storytelling that exists there. But yes, this is an interesting project to the overlap of brands that we deal with, being Australian Sports Museum, MCG, MCC. Warnie kind of touched all three.
Sorry.
I just wanted to make more of a comment, like amazing work, like I love your work, I've watched a lot of it. I think there's a real difference between what your marketing and branding department does, which is more of a sandwich board, on a street corner kind of work where they're giving you like factual details about, purchasing and prices and where to get it, blah, blah. Because what you guys are doing and what I think a lot of small museums could actually do is it building heart into the content, which is way more engaging and way more a reason to act, because it actually has meaning beyond, like we get, inundated with it cost $19.95. This actually, I know you know this, but just for everybody in this room, like, I think that's the point. It's really about heart and story. And so you extend that and then people want to come because it actually has some meaning, or it brings up a memory from the time they saw it, or, So yeah, it has, it's excellent. Anyway,
Oh, thank you.
so,
Yeah.
pleasure.
I think something we've been working on as well is working in conjunction with our marketing team. So it all plays into it. So you might watch this documentary, you absorb the story, and you might not book straight away, and then a couple of days later you get hit with that targeted ad
For sure.
saying to book now.
Yeah, it's a combination.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You've got to have the sandwich board as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we butter them up, and then they
That's right.
go
Fine,
in.
baby.
Potentially, yes.
There are two things that you mentioned, and I'm wondering about the relationship between them, although this might be a question you can't answer. You mentioned about more people watching YouTube on TVs and longer format videos. I'm just wondering if those two things kind of feed into each other. Obviously, with small format, fast fire stuff on the phone, this is a very different thing to sitting in your lounge room watching something on TV.
Yes. I think. Sorry, just to clarify the question, is it? Are you saying that because YouTube can be viewed on a television in your lounge room, that makes sense that I'll camp out there for a long time? But on a bus, if I'm watching YouTube on my phone, I might only stick with it for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, well, from personal experience, I'm aware that we were doing 1.5-hour interviews and putting 3 minutes of stuff on YouTube.
Yes.
And I bought a smart TV years ago and basically got to the point where I don't watch commercial TV at all.
Yes.
And so obviously then, 30, 40 minutes is an easy thing to do on TV,
Yeah.
which sitting there with the phone is probably less easy.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense, and I would tend to agree with it. YouTube is an interesting platform in that they also have YouTube Shorts, which is where you get the short form vertical content on YouTube. So if you open up the YouTube app on your phone, they're going to just send you heaps of this stuff. They're not going to send you much of this. Whereas if you open it up at home on your television or on a computer, then you'll get more of this, generally speaking. That all said, I saw a guy on the bus this morning with his phone sideways watching a drama, a TV drama. And, if he's that dialed into it, he'll watch it. And whilst there's a lot of research and genuine statistics around shorter attention spans and all this sort of thing, I personally believe, you can disagree with me.
This is where Ben and I start fighting.
Well, I believe that if it's entertaining, if it's engaging, and if you're a good enough storyteller, you'll hold someone's attention. I just finished a 23-hour podcast on the First World War, and I couldn't put it down. But I am a bit weird. But I mean, Gabby, you did mention that the.
I would almost consider YouTube less a social platform and more a streaming service. So the difference is you're making more active choices on YouTube. You're thinking about what you're going to watch. So yes, you'll get suggestions and your algorithm will feed you certain pieces of content, but you're more active in that decision-making process. Whereas you'll understand your Instagram and your TikTok algorithm, you're at the mercy of what you're fed. And because of that, people can be more brutal. I never asked for this warm content, it's gone.
Yeah.
Whereas on YouTube, you're sort of more actively seeking it out. So I think that's where it can differ. You still need catchy hooks and you need to be engaging no matter what type of content you're producing, but they do differ slightly in that regard.
Yeah, so we change, like the way we plan out this stuff and the way we cut it is very different to this, although the way I'm cutting a 10-minute program here is very different to how I would have cut it 15 years ago, because I know here you've got 3 seconds to get them, here maybe 15. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the.
I only put YouTube on the TV if it's in my toddler.
Right.
But you know, a lot of people will, you know, or maybe will watch something on YouTube. As this too goes on. But it would suggest that smart TV kind of actively streaming something. It's in your lounge room, whereas younger generation will sit on the bus watch a longer clip or stop and start it or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, we get all that data. It's fascinating. First of all, our audience across all our channels skews very male, and for the Gadding doco, I think it was a reasonably even spread across age demographics from the age of 30 up. So a part of me wondered if it would be a lot of sort of 60, 70-year-old males watching it who might have been, you know, in their 20s or 30s when this moment happened. But it was quite even from the age of 30 up. Did you have any observations on? Was that the same? Similar across there? And we get a high Indian audience as well, as worth noting. Yes. So 60%. Oh, yeah. 60% were on a TV. The next highest one was computer. I'm not sure how many, and then phone. Yeah.
It's worthwhile, given the recent changes to kids not having social media access, and as a parent of an 11 and a 13-year-old, my two only watch YouTube.
Yeah.
All they're on, and they get their half hour and they're scrolling through YouTube. So if you want to do any content targeted to kids, it has to be YouTube.
Yeah. Well, this is I think you mentioned younger generations maybe might not be sitting in a lounge room watching a TV. I'm talking more like, I'm talking like 18-year-olds, 25-year-olds. They're more on TikTok, I would say. Yeah, but not. I don't know. Not necessarily. Again, they're not watching commercial TV. A buddy of mine told me, and this is unverified statistics, but there's YouTube, Daylight, and then Netflix and all the other streamers. So it's overwhelmingly the most popular for streaming, as Gabby was saying. But it was only one piece of the puzzle for this. Cool. Thank you for having us.
Whoa.
Whoa.
No. I just want, before we go, Joe, sorry. I just wanted to link a few things quickly. First of all, how good are these guys? I mean, seriously. Let's give them a applause right now. And how lucky are we, as at best a medium-sized museum, probably a big, small museum, to have access to this kind of talent, this kind of awareness, this logic and deep thinking. And when they were talking about, you know, what's the problem, how do we resolve it, how do we execute it, it's how we do exhibitions. I mean, this is deep thinking. And they're doing it out for the public beyond the museum. And as was said, this is the museum going out into the wider world where we can't get to. So it's almost like we've got a second curation team curating our content, and it's going much further. And this is new. I mean, this team is a newish team, and this setup is a newish setup. But we're able to do magic. We can do magic now, which we couldn't before. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for that presentation. But isn't it great? I mean, we're so lucky. So, yeah.
I will qualify. This process is not a straightforward mathematical experience. Like, it sounds really like easy. Oh, look at this great idea they come up. And we do this for all manner of projects. 30-second things, 30-minute things. But it's not a straight road. There's a lot of circling, a lot of crying in the corner. It's ugly.
Again, exactly the same.
But it's messy. Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our speakers. They have timed it perfectly with little effort from me, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. That was wonderful. That's such a great session to start us off. It's now lunch. The lunch should have arrived. Yeah, Claire's got